Imagine a quiet night turned tragic in mere seconds.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
A young woman playing video games with her nephew, only to be fatally through her own window by a police officer.
Barefoot, comfortable, they're supposed to be safe.
What led to this devastating moment?
That silhouette has a firearm with a green laser mounted on the front rail of that firearm, pointed directly at Aaron, closer than me to you to the window.
And why did it ignite a firestorm in the community?
The entire city is in pain. As a mother, a grandmother, a sister, an aunt, I can't imagine anything worse, and I'm so sorry.
Stay tuned as we uncover the details of the Atatiana Jefferson case, a story of missteps, heartbreak,
I heard her scream and saw her fall like this. And I knew that I'd shot that person.
and the relentless quest for justice.
Zion Carr is Jefferson's nephew. The two were up late playing video games October 12th in Jefferson's home.
Welcome back to our channel. Today we delve into the most compelling and controversial cases that have shaken our society.
We cannot let one more person die because of police negligence.
If you crave real, raw, and eye-opening stories, hit that subscribe button and don't miss out on our in-depth analysis and exclusive interviews that bring you closer to the truth.
What other chores did she teach you to do?
It's not a chore, but she taught me how to make hamburger patties.
How do you make hamburger patties?
You take them out the freezer, put them on a pan.
Now let's get into the Atatiana Jefferson case and uncover what really happened that fateful night. It's a bit past 2 a.m. On a Saturday, October 12th, 2019, the Fort Worth Police Department gets a call on their non-emergency line. A concerned neighbor noticed something strange. One of the houses on his block had its doors wide open, but the screen door was closed and all the lights were on.
Fort Worth Police Operator M873, what's the address?
I'm calling about my neighbor.
Okay, what's the address?
1203 East Allen Avenue.
Okay, 1203 East Allen Avenue. What's going on there?
Well, the front doors have been open since 10 o'clock, and I haven't seen anybody moving around. It's not normal for them to have both of the doors open this time of night.
This was the house of a family he knew well. He wasn't sure if anyone was home, but he did notice that the usual cars were parked in the driveway. Something just didn't feel right, and he wanted to make sure everything was okay.
Okay, you know if anyone is inside?
Well, I'm not sure. Both of the cars are there.
Okay, bear with me. And they're in the driveway?
Both the cars in the driveway, yes.
Okay, can you give me a description, like a color of the vehicles?
Well, one's white and one's dark blue.
The white one is a sedan or a SUV? Okay. And what's your name?
James Smith.
This non-emergency call was made by James Smith. Now, James isn't just any neighbor. He's one of those folks who really care about his community. He owns several properties on the block and is always working with others to make the neighborhood better. Smith mentioned he'd never seen both their doors wide open with all the lights on. He joked that he could probably see straight through their home.
Are they usually home at this time?
They're usually home, but they never had both of the front doors open with the lights on, like I can see straight through the house. When my sister woke me up, she stays across the street, and then I live on the opposite side of my sister.
Okay. And the address that you gave me, 1203, that's their address, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We'll have an officer come by. They're already being dispatched now, okay?
Okay, appreciate it. I mean, it's just not normal for them to have both the doors open this late for that long.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, the police sent 2 officers to check it out. This call was labeled as an open structure call, which meant there could be something wrong. The officers dispatched were Aaron Dean and Carol Darch. Both were 18-month rookies on the force. They'd both joined the force in 2018 and had gone through the academy together, so they knew each other well. The body cam footage starts precisely at 2:31 a.m. and 42 seconds. The footage captures the officer approaching the front door of the house. The officer noticed some open cabinets and trash on the floor, which was odd. Moving to the east side of the house, the officer passes a white car parked under the car porch. Approaching the side door, they find the screen door closed again, but the main door remains open, providing visibility into the house. Officer Darch followed Officer Dean's lead since this was his call, and she was there to support him. Upon reaching the back of the house, a blue car sits in front of the garage. At 2:32 a.m. and 24 seconds, the officer activates their flashlight to inspect the gate leading to the backyard. It has been 42 seconds since checking the front door, and without identifying themselves as a police officer. This was standard procedure for this kind of call, but what they didn't know was that inside the house were two people, 28-year-old Atatiana Jefferson and her 8-year-old nephew Zion. At 2:32 a.m. and 48 seconds, the officer proceeds to open the gate and enter the backyard. An air conditioning unit is visible at the back of the house. Just 8 seconds later, the officer approaches the window at the rear of the house, where Atatiana Jefferson stands on the other side. Officer Aaron Dean shouts, "Put your hands up! Let me see your hands!" Without delay, a single shot is fired through the window.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
Officer Darch, who was facing the back of Officer Aaron Dean, was startled by the shot and turned around. She would later recall only seeing someone's eyes through the window, eyes as big as saucers.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
Both officers rushed to the front of the house and entered through the front door, announcing their presence as they moved through the house. They made their way to the back room, where they found Atatiana Jefferson lying on the floor, moaning in pain, with her nephew Zion crying beside her. A handgun was found on the floor near her. Tragically, Atatiana later died from the gunshot wound. About 2 hours after the shooting, Zion, Atatiana Jefferson's nephew, found himself at the police station. He was barefoot and still in his pajamas. There, he talked to a forensic psychologist.
I don't want when people do that to other people. They don't feel right. It makes me wonder who I'm going to live with now.
Zion explained that he and his aunt had been playing video games when they heard a noise outside. Atatiana thought it might be an intruder. Zion remembered her grabbing her gun from her purse and pointing it at the window. Then, in a flash, she was shot and fell to the ground. The next day, Sunday, the Fort Worth Police Department took action. Officer Aaron Dean was put on detached duty, meaning he lost his badge and gun. They also filed a personnel complaint against him.
Officer who shot Atatiana was served his written administrative complaint on Sunday. At that time, he was also placed on detached duty and stripped of his badge and firearm.
The department shared Officer Dean's body camera footage with the public, along with pictures of the gun they found near Atatiana.
Fort Worth officials released this image of a gun inside the home where Atatiana Jefferson lived, but they didn't explain how it was relevant.
Later on, Police Chief Ed Krause admitted it was a mistake to release those images of the gun. Atatiana had a legal right to own her gun and even had a concealed carry license.
The gun was found just inside the room, but it makes sense that she would have a gun if she felt that she was being threatened or there was someone in the backyard.
In Texas, it's totally legal to defend your home from what you think might be an intruder, even with deadly force. Atatiana's family and their lawyer were furious about the gun images being released. They said it was inappropriate and had nothing to do with why she died. The neighbor, James Smith, the one who made the call, was devastated. He blamed himself for everything.
I'm devastated because people say, well, James, it's not your fault. You're not your fault. But I made the call. I made the call because I thought that they were going to do what I called them to do, check on my neighbor. And they didn't do that.
Chief Krause apologized in public.
It was a bad thing to do. I think it was to show that there was a weapon involved. However, we're homeowners in the state of Texas. I can't imagine most of us if we thought we had somebody outside our house they shouldn't be and we had access to a firearm, that we wouldn't act very similarly to how she acted.
Mayor Betsy Price told everyone that there was no doubt that Atatiana was a victim.
I wanted to say a few things to my city. We are all heartbroken today. Atatiana was a beautiful, smart, amazing young woman, by all accounts, who was unjustly taken from her family. The entire city is in pain. As a mother, a grandmother, a sister, an aunt, I can't imagine anything worse, and I'm so sorry. On behalf of the entire city of Fort Worth, I'm sorry.
Speaking directly to the neighbor James Smith, who made the call, the mayor said,
To Mr. James Smith, I know you're hurting today as well. You called police, as we ask good neighbors to do. You were being that wonderful neighbor, the one that we all want next door to us, the type of person who does what's right in Fort Worth. Atatiana's death has left you totally shaken, and your sense of security and trust in law enforcement jeopardized. And I'm sorry. To Atatiana's nephew, who witnessed the unspeakable loss, sorry doesn't cut it.
The mayor said again that Atatiana was well within her rights to have a gun in her home.
Lastly, the images released showing the gun inside Miss Jefferson's home. The gun is irrelevant. She was in her own home, caring for an 8-year-old nephew. Atatiana was a victim. She was taken from her family in circumstances that are truly unthinkable.
On October 14, 2019, just 2 days after the shooting, Officer Dean resigned from the Fort Worth Police Department.
My intent was to meet with him today to terminate his employment with the Fort Worth Police Department. However, the officer tendered his resignation this morning before we met.
Chief Kraus mentioned that Officer Dean was going to be fired because of the incident anyway.
Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violations of several policies, including our use of force policy, our de-escalation policy, and unprofessional conduct.
Just hours after his resignation, the now former Officer Dean was arrested and charged with murder.
At approximately 6 p.m. yesterday, Aaron Dean was arrested for the murder of Miss Jefferson. We obtained an arrest warrant after enough evidence and facts were analyzed and verified.
He was taken into custody at his attorney's office and booked into the Tarrant County Jail. Later, he was released on a $200,000 bond.
A team of officers quickly effected his arrest at the office of his attorney. He was booked into the Tarrant County Jail where his bond was set by the presiding magistrate. He has since posted bond.
This enraged the protesters even more.
There is no way the incompetent officer that you hired should have shot her. And there is no way he should be out on bond.
Mayor Betsy Price witnessed the public uproar in person in the council chambers.
We cannot let one more person die because of police negligence.
More than 300 filled the room. 50 of them had their voices heard, restricted, however, to what Mayor Betsy Price saw relevant.
There was quite a stir in the community concerning the standard procedures for officers responding to an open structure call. James Smith, the neighbor, placed a non-emergency call. People were questioning why this call wasn't treated as a welfare check, where officers typically announce their presence. On that day, Officer Aaron Dean and Officer Carol Darch chose to park their marked police vehicles around the corner and approach the house on foot. They didn't activate their police lights or sirens. The community wanted answers.
The officers do not know if that call came in through 911 or non-emergency. They both go to the same dispatcher. An open structure call is something that you would typically park down the street and approach cautiously. Welfare check is something that doesn't require quite a heightened response.
On October 24th, Atatiana Jefferson was laid to rest in Dallas, the city where she grew up. At the time of her death, she was working in pharmaceutical equipment sales and had recently moved back into her mother's home to take care of her. Her mother's health was declining, and moving back allowed Atatiana to be a caregiver while also saving money. She had hopes of returning to school.
So Atatiana, raised in Dallas, went off to school at Xavier University, graduated, her biology degree. After that, you're going to hear how she came home. And in 2019, she had moved in with her mom, Yolanda Carr, off East Allen, to take care of her mom's failing health.
Atatiana graduated from Xavier University in 2014 with a degree in biology and was aiming to go to medical school to become a doctor. Her 8-year-old nephew, Zion, also lived in the house full-time. His mother, Atatiana's sister, Amber Carr, was frequently in the hospital due to her own illness.
She was also there to help take care of Zion, help raise him, because at that time, Amber was having some severe health issues with her heart.
As the city of Fort Worth reeled from the shock of these terrible events, everyone was watching the local courts to see how quickly the trial would begin. But as 2019 came to a close, the COVID-19 pandemic started in January 2020. The courts set and then canceled trial dates repeatedly. By October 2020, Judge David Hagerman indicated that the trial might be pushed to August 2021. The wait for justice continued as the community and Atatiana's family tried to cope with their profound loss. In March 2021, Zion, his mom, Amber Carr, and a handful of protesters gathered outside the Tarrant County Tim Curry Criminal Justice Center. This was where they were supposed to prosecute Dean, but the family was tired of the endless wait. Amber was frustrated that other parts of the government had reopened during the pandemic, but families like hers were still waiting for justice. Months went by with no trial date in sight. Judge David Hagerman seemed too bogged down with a full docket to set a date for Dean's trial. It took him months, and finally, Judge Hagerman set a trial date for November 16, 2021. However, that date came and went with more delays due to his full docket.
I grant you your motion for continuance, and now you're complaining about me granting your motion for continuance?
Another full year passed. In June 2022, Dean's legal team requested that Judge Hagerman be removed from the case entirely, citing bias.
Lawyers for a former Fort Worth police officer charged with murder are asking for a new judge. Lawyers for Aaron Dean say Judge David Hagerman is biased against the defense.
They presented 11 witnesses who testified that Hagerman wouldn't be able to preside over the trial fairly.
And so we're going to comply because this family has been through enough already.
The motion was granted, and a new judge, George Gallagher, was assigned to the case. Judge Gallagher promptly set a new trial date for December 5, 2022. Prosecutor Ashley Diener gave the opening statements for the prosecution, marking the beginning of the long-awaited trial.
Atatiana Jefferson, just 28 years old, died in her bedroom, face down. She was not alone. Now, this is not a case that deals with rival gang members shooting each other. This is not a case about a drug deal gone bad or a robbery. This is a case about a Fort Worth police officer, a stranger to Atatiana, who through the back of her bedroom window in the middle of the night. And she was in her home and should have been safe.
Prosecutor opening statement Diener told the jury about what a caring person Atatiana was. She was a devoted daughter and a loving aunt. On the day before her death, October 11, 2019, neighbors saw her outside teaching her nephew Zion how to use a lawnmower.
And you guys are going to hear on October the 11th, just a regular day, Atatiana had taken Zion outside. He's 8 years old at this time. And let me tell you, Zion's very rambunctious and energetic, as many 8-year-olds are, right? And you're going to hear from witnesses that will describe neighbors across the street that saw Atatiana and Zion outside, her trying to teach him how to mow the lawn. So this neighbor sees Zion running across the lawn, pushing a lawnmower, trying to learn how to veg.
That evening, they had cooked hamburgers together, though not all of them turned out perfectly. Some of the burgers had burned, but it didn't matter.
After that, on October the 11th, They went inside, and they had dinner that night. They burned the hamburgers they were making in the kitchen.
They were enjoying their time together, just a regular night in, filled with love and laughter.
So there was smoke. So both the front and the side door of this house, they opened to let that smoke go out. Both of these doors also had storm doors, kind of like those storm doors that they'll have, it's either a screen or glass. That was kept shut, but the main door, the front and the side, were open to let that smoke go out.
On the night of the incident, it was just Atatiana and Zion at home. Atatiana's mother was in the hospital, so it was just the two of them. After they had eaten their burgers, Zion went to bed, but Atatiana stayed up to play video games, something she enjoyed doing in her free time.
She was working, taking care of Zion, her mother, her family. She also loved to play video games. Loved to game, but she would get on the computer, play video games with Zion. That's what she loved to do. In fact, her siblings would poke fun at her for playing video games all the time. Just what she liked to do.
Around 2 a.m., Zion woke up and realized that his aunt was still awake. So, he decided to join her.
He's still playing video games and she's up. So, 8-year-old says, I want to play too. So he gets up and he starts playing video games with her. So they're laughing, having a good time. Atatiana and Zion had no idea what was coming.
It was at this exact moment that across the street, their neighbor James Smith called the non-emergency number.
They had no idea that across the street, James Smith and neighbor had called the non-emergency number for Fort Worth because he saw and noticed those two doors were open. That front door and that side door were wide open. Lights are all on in the house.
Prosecutor Diener told the jury that when the officers arrived at the home, they didn't bother knocking or ringing the doorbell.
And you guys are going to see they don't announce. They don't knock. They don't ring the doorbell. They don't step back and call for backup.
Instead, they started moving around the exterior of the house and into the backyard. As they were walking around, Officer Darch accidentally bumped into Zion's bicycle outside, knocking it over.
Darch, his partner, goes between the car, the dark car, and the house. And there's a bicycle right there. And Darch kind of hits that bicycle. It's Zion's bicycle. It's a little kid's bicycle.
At that exact moment, Officer Dean stepped in front of the window with his flashlight. He shouted to the figure on the other side, telling them to put their hands up. And then, without hesitation, he fired his weapon.
And you're going to see on this body camera that he turns. Something catches out of the left of his eye. Something catches. He sees something. He turns. And you will hear, put your hands up, show me your hands. And I'm talking about, show me your hands, put your hands up. It is not fast enough for Atatiana to process and follow the commands.
It was impossible for Atatiana to respond quickly enough to follow Officer Dean's commands. It was also too fast for Officer Dean to have seen a gun in her hands. According to Diener, it was only after the shooting, when the officers entered the house, that they began to identify themselves as police officers.
So after this shot is fired, immediately his partner, Darch, says, we got to get in there. We got to get in there. Dean, we got to get in there. So at that point, they go from the backyard, out the gate, around the cars, side of the house, back to the front, through the carport, in the front, in through the front door, start going through the house, straight inside, and you'll hear Darch say, put your hands up, Fort Worth Police, starts to finally announce.
When Dean entered the room, he didn't offer any first aid to Atatiana, but instead started looking around. It was then that he found the gun on the floor with its laser sight on.
So after they get inside, And he is looking around, he starts playing with her gun, trying to figure out how to turn off the light of the laser, trying to figure out how to disarm it, sets it down, still not providing any kind of CPR or life-saving measures to her.
Only after the medics arrived on the scene, he then placed a blanket on Atatiana's wound in an attempt to help her. But tragically, it was too late.
And it's not until you hear at the very front, because they called for medical help and other backup, when he hears those first few officers show up at that front door, because they announced Fort Worth Police, you're going to hear him say, "We're back here." And it's at that point he grabs a blanket and finally puts it on her chest. But it's too late.
Dean's attorney, Miles Brissett, argued that Dean approached that night as just another day on the job until he saw Atatiana's silhouette in the window, holding a gun with a bright green laser on it. He claimed that Dean acted in self-defense because of this perceived threat.
Here's what they're told when they're going to the call, both on the radio, for the ear, and for them to read. Complainant advised, front doors to addresses open. Both the neighbors' vehicles are in driveway. White sedan and dark colored sedan. Neighbors are usually home, but never has door open. The word welfare is never said. They're given a signal 56. It's not a welfare check to Dean and Darch. The doors are open. That's what they have as the data elements when they arrive on scene.
Dean and his partner, Darch, were instructed to respond as if to a silent alarm, meaning they were not supposed to park in front of the house and were to inspect the structure for forced entry quietly.
You don't park in front for officer safety. So they park down the street on Mississippi, short distance away, and walk up. Silent alarm says you don't reveal your position. You check to make sure if there's any forced entry on the structure.
Brissett highlighted the state of the home, suggesting it looked ransacked, indicating a possible burglary in progress.
When they looked inside and saw the mess that was inside the front of this residence, through the front door you see the living room. Through the living room it's kind of a living room combo kitchen. Upper cabinets in the kitchen are out, open, stuff strewn all over the floor. The living room looks like it's been ransacked.
When Dean saw the silhouette holding a weapon, Brissett claimed, he gave a command and fired his weapon in what he believed was self-defense.
And as soon as he and his partner go in the backyard, they're immediately presented with a situation that they have to deal with. As soon as Aaron enters the backyard, he sees a silhouette in the window. Aaron sees that silhouette in the window, and that silhouette has a firearm. That silhouette has a firearm with a green laser mounted on the front rail of that firearm, pointed directly at Aaron, closer than me to you to the window. Aaron has an air conditioning unit to his right, a gate and obstruction of a fence to his left, and his partner is butt cheek to butt cheek behind him. He has no place to go. He takes a half a step back, gives the commands, as part of training, draws his weapon for the first and only time right then, and fires one shot.
Brissett explained that by the time the officers made their way inside, Atatiana's wounds were already fatal. He pointed out that during Zion's initial interview with the police, he had stated that he knew it was the male officer who fired the shot, not the female officer. Zion had also mentioned seeing the police badge through the window. According to Zion, his aunt had raised her gun to the window before being shot.
And there's some key takeaways I think you're going to hear from him. One, he recognizes the Fort Worth badge. And when Lindsay's talking to him, he knows it's the male that shot, not the female. So we start to talk about and see what was seen from the inside, from the eyes of an 8-year-old. And he'll tell you, he acted it out for Lindsay, hopefully he'll tell you here, that his aunt raised the gun up and didn't do what the officer told her to do.
Brissett described the events as a tragic accident, highlighting the confusion and split-second decisions made in a tense and uncertain situation.
Everybody in Texas, everybody in the United States has a right to defend themselves in their home. This is a tragic accident. That gun was placed in the line of a police officer. A green laser was placed on the officer. That officer considered that to be deadly force against him and reacted accordingly. And tragically, Ms. Jefferson lost her life.
Brissett urged the jury to consider whether Dean's actions were reasonable based on all the information he knew at the time. At just 11 years old, Zion took the stand during Aaron Dean's trial.
You have a favorite subject in school?
Math.
Why do you like math so much?
Because I like doing multiplication and division.
He shared his dreams of becoming an NBA player when he grew up.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
An NBA player.
Do you have a backup plan in case you're not an NBA player?
A scientist.
Zion described living with his Aunt Tay and his granny because his mom was unwell, and he enjoyed the care and fun they provided.
Did you like living with your grandmother and your auntie?
Yes, sir.
What did you like about it?
I like how my auntie always played games and my granny take care of me.
He fondly recalled how Atatiana taught him everyday skills like mowing the lawn and cooking, including a heartwarming moment in court when he explained how to make hamburgers.
What other chores did she teach you to do?
It's not a chore, but she taught me how to make hamburger patties.
How do you make hamburger patties?
You take them out the freezer, put them on a pan, or put them in an oven, or get a pan and put them on there and put it on the stove and just let it sit and then flip it.
Zion recounted the night of the shooting, how they tried to fan out smoke from burnt burgers and returned to playing video games.
So before you were in the bedroom with her, with Aunt Tay, what were you doing? What were y'all doing together?
Playing video games.
Before then even, did y'all cook hamburgers that night?
Yes, sir.
Who cooked the hamburgers?
Me.
All right. Did you cook them just like you told us earlier?
Yes, sir. But I burnt them.
You burned them? How'd you know you burned them?
Because we were just playing games, then we just heard the alarm going off, then we opened it, a whole bunch of smoke came out of the oven.
And were you cooking these in the kitchen?
Yes, sir.
He remembered his aunt grabbing her gun from her purse after hearing a noise outside, keeping it by her side, contrary to an earlier interview where he mentioned her raising it to the window.
And so you said she went to her purse and grabbed out a weapon. What do you mean by weapon, Zion?
A gun.
Was it a big long gun or a gun that you can hold in your hand?
A gun you can hold in your hand.
And did you see her go to her purse and get that gun?
Yes, sir.
And what did she do after she took the gun out of her purse?
She just held it to her side. She didn't point it up. She just kept it next to her, like on her side.
And where did she go with that, after she picked up the gun?
She was about to start walking to the window.
Okay.
When pressed about this discrepancy, Zion struggled to recall specific details.
Did you see, whenever your Aunt Tay walked towards the window with the gun, did you see her kind of pull the gun up just a little bit away from her side?
No, sir.
Now, when we talked before, you said that she did kind of pull the gun up a little bit. Do you remember that?
No, sir.
It's okay if you remember it. I mean, I just want you to remember it exactly the way you do. Do you remember if she had the gun up or down?
Down.
During questioning, Zion admitted he didn't see a badge when he looked out the window, only his aunt moving and then falling.
Did you see anything outside the window?
No, sir.
You didn't see a man with a badge?
No, sir.
Did you hear anything before she fell to the ground?
No, sir.
What happened after she fell to the ground?
She started crying, and then after that, 2 police officers came and got me.
Did you know what had happened at that point?
No, sir.
Did you know if your Aunt Tay was hurt?
Yes, sir.
What were you thinking?
I was thinking, is it a dream?
He was cross-questioned over inconsistencies in his memory.
When you met with these 2 folks over here a couple of weeks ago, You told them something different about how your aunt was holding that gun, didn't you?
No, sir.
You told it exactly like the same way you told it here today?
Yes, sir.
The jury watched Zion's full video interview with detectives.
I don't like when people do that to other people. They don't feel right. It makes me wonder who I will live with now.
It was in this video Zion shows how his aunt pointed a gun at the officer. Next up was Officer Darch, who took the stand.
What did you do as far as job-wise before you were a Fort Worth police officer?
I was a waitress.
Okay.
After graduating from the academy, she aimed to work on the east side of Fort Worth.
What made you want to be a Fort Worth police officer?
I just have a knack for helping people.
And did you have a particular area that you wanted to work in the area of Fort Worth?
East side.
On October 12, 2019, when she heard the dispatch for assistance needed for an open structure. Learning that Officer Dean was already en route, she decided to take the assist spot. Officer Darch was just a mile or two away from the house and responded quickly.
So when you are driving out to 1203 East Allen and hearing that it's an open structure, what thoughts are in your mind, if any?
I honestly can't tell you what I was thinking that day. Other open structures, you go to burglary, thinking what you're going to encounter on the call.
When Officer Darch arrived at the address, she recalled finding it peculiar that both doors were wide open at such a late hour. They then peered through to see inside the house.
And so you look inside, what do you see?
The cabinets are standing wide open. There are things just thrown about. It looked like the house had been burglarized from the living room, kitchen area.
Recalling the events, Officer Darch mentioned that as they checked the perimeter of the home, they refrained from announcing themselves in case a burglar was still inside. They also avoided parking directly outside the house for the same reason. As they cleared the backyard back to back, Officer Darch was facing away from the house when she heard the shot ring out behind her.
So get over there to the backyard. You said you heard a shot and you turned all the way around, and then you.
I heard him give commands. I started turning, was halfway through my turn, and that's when I heard the shot.
Do you remember exactly what words he used in his commands?
No, ma'am.
She described how she helped Zion once they entered the home.
As soon as I came through the door, I heard the baby, and that became my sole focus.
What did you do with the child?
I got him to come to me. We went down the hallway. I remembered that it was cold outside because I had my jacket on, and there was a blanket on the back of the couch, so I wrapped him up and I went and stood on the curb with him so that he didn't have to see what was going on in there.
She admitted that Dean did not perform any life-saving measures. Gabriel Talbert was the dispatcher who took James Smith's non-emergency the phone call that night.
So what information were you given?
Everything that I wrote on this sheet, that the caller said that the front door to that address is open. Both neighbors' vehicles are in the driveway, and then I described the vehicles, a white sedan, a dark colored sedan, and that neighbors are usually home, but never has the door open.
On the fourth day of the trial, former officer Aaron Dean took the stand to present his side of the story for the first time. He expressed his decision to testify, stating, "This jury needs to hear from me and hear the truth." Dean, who was 36 years old at the time of the shooting and grew up in Arlington, Texas, described arriving as the second officer at the address on 1203 East Allen Avenue in the early morning hours of October 12, 2019, with Officer Darch arriving first.
The street was dark. The residents at 1203 East Allen had, I could see the front door open and light spilling out of that front door. So there were lights on inside. I remember it being quiet. I really don't remember hearing much of anything.
He testified that it looked as though the home had been ransacked.
Do you look in the front door, the addressable side, the front side of the house?
Yes.
What observations do you make, if any?
I observed that the storm door, the glass door was shut, the inner door was open. Objects were just strewn about inside. I could see kind of straight back to a dining table, a little bit of living area, and a kitchen. I could see objects just strewn all over the floor. It looked ransacked. It was a mess.
He remembered examining the window for any indications of forced entry.
I was looking at the window to see if it appeared, signs of forced entry. The screen appeared intact, but I leaned down to look for jimmy marks or something like that. And at that point, I also peered inside the window just to see if objects were broken or messed up in there, or if there was someone in there.
When Dean saw the figure in the window of the home, he noted they were close to the window. He expressed his belief that it might be a burglar.
Well, I thought we had a burglar, so I stepped back, straightened up, and drew my weapon, and then pointed it towards the figure. I couldn't see that person's hands, and we're taught that the hands, and it's what's in them that kill. We need to see the hands. We need to get people to show us our hands and get control of those hands. So I drew my weapon, intending to tell that person to show me their hands.
The time between him spotting someone in the window and pulling the trigger was no more than 4 seconds.
Well, as I said, I needed to see that person's hands, because the hands carry weapons. The hands are the threat to us. So I looked back after I got my light on, saw the silhouette again, and I was shouting at this time, shouting commands. Put up your hands. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. And as I started to get that second phrase out, show me your hands, I saw the silhouette. I was looking right down the barrel of a gun. And when I saw the barrel of that gun pointed at me, I fired a single from my duty weapon. And immediately had the flash from the muzzle reflecting off the window, and of course, as my weapon recoiled, the light was bouncing back in my face, so I couldn't see. When my vision cleared, then I observed the person that we now know as Miss Jefferson. I heard her scream and saw her fall like this, and I knew that I'd shot that person.
Dean testified that immediately after the shot rang out, he heard Officer Darch call out, "Shots fired," over the radio. He emphasized the urgency of getting medics there as quickly as possible and described his attempt to even climb through the window to enter the house.
I observed the person, obviously we now know it's Miss Jefferson, laying face down on the floor, and I really couldn't see anything else in the room. And Officer Darch said, "We got to get in there, we got to get in there." And I said, "Yeah," and I tried to even jerk at the window just to get right inside, but it wouldn't come up. So we started running around the house, through the gate and around.
During cross-examination, Dean faced intense questioning about his decision to enter the home immediately after the shooting. If there was someone inside with a gun, why did he disregard protocol and rush into the house?
You got in the house? Did you tell Darch there was a gun then?
When I found it, yes.
Oh, when you found it. I'm talking about in the living room after you opened the fatal funnel of the front door. Did you tell her there was a gun in that house?
No.
You got another fellow officer from the Fort Worth Police Department entering a home which you have determined to be a burglary in progress with possible armed assailants, and you didn't think to tell your partner, "Hey, there's a gun inside"?
No.
You didn't think to tell her, "Hey, I saw somebody with a gun"?
No.
Do you not like Officer Darch?
I like her just fine.
but you didn't seem too concerned for her safety. In your head is what's going on, and there's this burglary in progress, and bad guys are there with guns. You let your partner walk into that house without giving her any heads up whatsoever that the bad guy might have a gun. Is that really what you did?
We were talking on the radio and yelling commands.
Did you tell her there was a gun?
I did not.
Is that good police work?
No.
The prosecutor highlighted that despite this, Officer Darch was tasked with clearing rooms alone, while Dean made his way to the back room. Clearing a room alone goes strictly against protocol.
And we got to that back bedroom. As we moved through the house, all of the rooms, they were all a mess. Everything was a mess in that house, just objects everywhere, objects all over the floor, all over the furniture. It looked trashed. It looked like somebody had just gone through everything. And I get to that back bedroom, and off to my right, I see a kid. Of course, we know it's Zion. And I'm thinking, who brings a kid to a burglary? What is going on?
Dean emphasized that his first priority was to secure the gun and move it away from Atatiana. He explained that he couldn't immediately provide aid because he had misplaced his trauma kit several days prior. The defense team also called upon a use of force expert, Dr. J. Coons. Dr. Coons affirmed that Dean and Dar displayed good police work, stating that both officers acted appropriately based on their belief at the time that it was a burglary call.
They're looking in, they don't see anybody, so they go ahead and cross the threshold. So the way in which they did it, given the nature of the call, given the information that they picked up at that point, it was perfectly fine. There's nothing good about this. But his actions as a police officer were reasonable in what he was doing.
While Dr. Coons termed the shooting a tragic event, he asserted that Dean's actions as an officer that night were reasonable. However, he noted that backup would have been necessary in a burglary situation, suggesting that Dean should have called for backup if he believed it was a genuine break-in. In a rebuttal, the prosecution called forensic analyst Jonathan Priest to the stand. Priest testified that Dean and Officer Dar should have remained at the front door of the home instead of checking the surrounding areas.
There were a number of mistakes that were made in this particular case that the officers certainly could have followed better practices in how they approached the scene. That from a tactical aspect, there were difficulties in how the shooting actually occurred. They moved to a backyard where now we're dealing with a warrantless entry issue. They're going through a closed gate to get into a secure backyard with no exigent circumstances that I saw. So from a tactical standpoint, at this point, they're not only going into a blind area through a closed wooden fenced yard, they're also violating their policy, their procedures, and it made zero tactical sense.
He remarked that while the officers' approach wasn't terrible, it could have been improved, emphasizing the need for them to call for backup. During her closing arguments, Prosecutor Diener urged the jury to hold Dean accountable for his actions. She asserted that he responded too hastily and made a grave mistake that resulted in the loss of an innocent woman's life. The defense attorney countered that Aaron Dean undoubtedly witnessed Atatiana pointing her gun at him and had no alternative but to fire his weapon in self-defense, not only for himself, but also for his partner. Gill acknowledged Atatiana's right to defend herself in her own home, but contended that it did not extend to resisting police officers. In the end, it was argued that Atatiana's wounds were too severe for any life-saving measures Dean might have attempted to be successful. The jury deliberated for over 13 hours before reaching their verdict: guilty of manslaughter, but not the original charge of murder.
Verdict reads, we, the jury, find the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty of the offense of manslaughter.
Under the manslaughter conviction, Dean faced up to 20 years in prison. Prosecutors wanted the maximum sentence, while the defense pushed for probation. This marked the first time an on-duty officer was convicted of manslaughter in Tarrant County. Aaron Dean was sentenced to 11 years, 10 months, and 12 days in prison, while the specific sentencing time struck many involved in the case as significant. The prosecution team saw it as a message.
We, the jury, having found the defendant Aaron York Dean guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the offense of manslaughter, assess his punishment at confinement in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 11 years, 10 months, 12 days.
11 years, that's the same age as Zion. 10 months, 12 days, that's the day that it happened. It's a message. We're not going to forget Atatiana. Despite the guilty verdict, Aaron Dean's defense team insists on a new trial.
1 year after a jury convicted former Fort Worth police officer Aaron Dean of manslaughter, his attorneys won his conviction overturned.
They filed a motion to investigate the jury after discovering social media posts allegedly from a juror seeking opinions and information online during the trial.
They say there's just no way a Tarrant County jury could be impartial because the mayor, police chief, and other elected officials had already publicly expressed strong opinions about the case.
Judge Gallagher approved the motion, and Dean's team obtained copies of the jurors' contact information for their investigation. On 15th of May 2024, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals rejected the appeal to review the manslaughter conviction of Aaron Dean. Dean will be eligible for parole on November 18, 2028, the date on which he will have served half of the term. As we reflect on the tragic events surrounding the death of Atatiana Jefferson, we're left with haunting questions about accountability, justice, and the protocols that govern those sworn to protect us. This case isn't just about one night or one decision. It's a stark reminder of the complexities and flaws within our systems. Atatiana's story continues to resonate, urging us all to demand transparency, fairness, and change. It's a call to ensure that such a tragedy never happens again, and to honor her memory by striving for a more just society. Thank you for joining us, where we bring you the cases that matter and the stories that need to be told. If Atatiana Jefferson's story moved you, don't just watch. Get involved. Share this video to raise awareness. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and let's start a conversation about justice and reform. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you never miss our deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Together, we can push for change and keep these important conversations alive. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.